From South Carolina Public Radio, this is Walter Edgar's Journal. This week, we will be talking with Sara Arnold from the Gibbes Museum of Art in Charleston, art historian Frank Martin, and artist Leo Twiggs about his exhibition at the Gibbes called Revelations, the Art of Leo Twiggs.
At 92 years of age, Leo Twiggs has a perspective on life in South Carolina that covers fundamental changes in our state and our nation. His art is both intensely personal and a commentary on the struggles that both black and white South Carolinians share.
Frank Martin, long time no see.
Long time no see. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Sara, thank you for driving up from Charleston.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us today.
And Leo, on the telephone, it's always good to speak to you, my friend.
Thank you, Walter. Same here.
Sara, let's start with you because the Gibbes is hosting right now a marvelous exhibition called Revelations, the Art of Leo Twiggs.
We are. We're very honored to have this exhibition on display. It is really a celebration of Dr. Twiggs's incredible 60-year career. It's also an anniversary of the very first time Dr. Twiggs had a solo exhibition at the Gibbes, which was in 1976.
Wow, okay. And Frank, you were the guest curator for this exhibit, were you not?
Yes, it was my great pleasure to be invited by Sara and the staff. I think Angela Mack was still the director at the time I was brought on, to shepherd this exhibition through and to act as the sort of principal interpreter for selecting the works that would be shown and to write the catalog entries and descriptions. So, and it's almost like a payback because Dr. Twiggs was such a wonderful, he's my boss originally. I came to Orangeburg because he invited me to come. And this exhibition was kind of an opportunity to honor him and to thank him for all the wonderful things he'd done in terms of bringing me back to South Carolina and being such a wonderful person to work with. He acted more like a colleague than a boss. He never really acted like a boss. You know how he is.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And Sara, let's talk a little bit about your background before you came to Charleston.
Oh, gosh. We're going back a long way, Walter. I've been in Charleston for about 22 years, but I originally came from Atlanta, which was where I was born and raised, and finished my graduate degree there at Georgia State University before moving to Charleston and working at the Gibbes for a number of years as archivist and associate curator, and now I'm the chief curator at the Gibbes.
Okay. Well, Frank, you mentioned Angela Mack, who was the former CEO of the Gibbes. I'm getting old. All of my friends are retiring.
Including me. I'm retired.
Are you retired?
Yes.
What really gets you old is I have had former students who are now retiring, and that tells me I'm way I'm not quite with Leo, but I'm getting old.
You're not old. You're an institution.
Oh my gosh!
Is that worse?
Yeah, I don't know if that means you should be institutionalized, but
Alfred working with you could do that.
Could do that. Yes, it could.
He's a state treasure.
Well,
I agree.
A national treasure.
Well,
I agree.
Well, one of the things about the exhibition, and this goes to you, Frank, the selection of items. I must confess, because I did not see the first exhibition, that Leo did oils, and I found the selection of the oils fascinating. Obviously, the portraits of Rosa, his wife, but watermelons. And Leo, this is where I think we're all going to come to you. I looked at that, open watermelons with a very large knife sticking in one, and thinking, was this a precursor to the double-edged meaning that you apply to your batiks in terms of heritage? And you and I have talked about this many times, Leo, is...
Yes, we have.
It's everybody's history. It's not just black history. It's not just white history. It's South Carolina history. So you're using an image that to some African Americans is offensive, the watermelon, and sometimes there are white folks who would associate that with black folks. It's like your Confederate flag. But my point was, were you heading this way subconsciously?
Walter, I suspect so. I think we paint out of our experience, our encounters with the world. And when I did watermelons, I did not realize that I made the knife oversized. I just felt that it worked with the composition. And then once I started doing it, then subconsciously, I suspect it just meant cutting loose that connection to stereotype. And I suspect that some other people would see that too. And of course, Frank came along and did a beautiful explanation of that. And I didn't think that he noticed. For most people, it's just a watermelon with a big knife. But there are things in it that I put in because of my subconscious connection to my past and to my environment.
All right. Frank, why did you select watermelons?
Well, many people know Dr. Twiggs' batiks, but they didn't see the processes that he went through before arriving at a method that was just very peculiar to himself, a sort of singular vision of how he wanted to work. And the watermelons introduced something part of Southern heritage. It is, of course, a fruit that has an origin in Africa. It's been identified during the Reconstruction period. A lot of African-American farmers grew watermelons and sold them on the side of the road because it was a kind of economic autonomy. And it's also, it was, before the seedless watermelon, it was a clumsy fruit to eat. And it's true, there are a lot of, I still have friends who want to eat a watermelon in public. They want to eat, because they don't know if there's seeds, and the sweetest ones have the seeds. So I don't care. I eat the watermelon no matter what. I love the watermelon because I was raised on the farm. But it is emblematic of the South. And you might know Thomas Hovenden, and he has this wonderful painting of a young man with a watermelon. And it's one of these art, or Winslow Homer also did the images of young African-American people eating watermelon. And then there's the painter Palmer Hayden, who used the watermelon in the stereotypical way, and it was very much frowned on by the NAACP and others because they thought he was doing stereotypes. So it's true Dr. Twiggs did raise a hornet's nest by painting these watermelons. But Dr. Twiggs, did Hale Woodruff tell you to create these images that were emblematic of your Southern heritage?
Yes. My professor at NYU, Hale Woodruff, who was a professor and evolved into a colleague, and we became great friends. One of the things he said is that we African Americans need to create images in our paintings that uses the things that we know, the icons that we know, just as Picasso did in his painting at the Metropolitan at the Florence Museum of Art. He used the bull and the horse and the Guernica. And so I just started playing around with that because I thought that was a great idea. And so some of my symbolism, cows and mules and things like that in my painting refer to that. I usually use it, especially that there's a painting that I call Evening of the Rooster that's in there. And the rooster as a barnyard image that is, of course, king of the barnyard, strutting like, the gamecock blue, and yet he is not really in charge. He could be taken just like anybody else. And so I use these images as a part of my work.
And these motifs that are emblematic of Southern experience are also part of why I wanted to select certain things to create a narrative, because, the show is arranged thematically. It's not arranged chronologically. And that's not the usual method for approaching a retrospective. Usually the retrospective is, he went through this period, he went through that period. But instead, because Dr. Twiggs is so complex, I decided that it would be easier to do aesthetically arranged themes and to show these stages of development in his career as opposed to just doing a strict chronology, because his work was resistant to being presented as a strict chronology.
He didn't have a blue period or a pink period or whatever.
He does have themes, and he does do series.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
so
yes.
but it's not as the example using is Picasso, of course, who
Yes.
evolved toward a cubism after starting out in one way and then moving to another. And to some extent, Dr. Twiggs does that also. Let Sara take up from here. But it's the oil paintings, and particularly it was the abstraction, River's Edge, that I knew people were not familiar with. And so it's to show them something new. The show is called Revelations, is to reveal this extraordinary creativity over a 60-year period that this incredible person that I happen to know was manifesting in his work. But the works are dispersed. They're not all together. So this was a chance to put them together, create this narrative, and let people see this evolution.
Okay. Sara?
Well, and I do appreciate Frake's effort to bring Dr. Twiggs's works together in this thematic approach. And it's been interesting to see people interact with the works hanging together in the galleries in this fashion, because we have, for instance, some of the abstractions, Red Thing and River's Edge, which are, complete abstractions that he was experimenting with while he was at NYU. And you are in the same space interacting with his much later batiks from 2018, 2019, 2020. And you get to look at that aspect of Dr. Twiggs, the influence of that period of experimentation where he doesn't completely let go of the idea that this is an expressionistic form while he's a narrative painter. He's still expressing things in abstract ways in certain pieces. So having those two aspects of his career in the same space has been exciting for visitors to interact with the paintings in that way.
And I'd like, before we go too much further, we're talking about the exhibition, which is currently at the Gibbes, and it's coming to an end soon, so we should probably mention that. And it's also moving on afterwards, is it not?
Yes, and we're very happy to say that the exhibition will be on view through May 3rd at the Gibbes Museum of Art, but it will also travel to the Florence County Museum and opens there on June 8th.
And Sara worked on arranging this traveling component of the exhibition. I had the pleasure of just doing pure joy in selecting the works. Now, all the hard work, I have to admit, but Sara and her staff, because they were the people who were primarily contacting the lenders, they were doing all the contracts, they were making all the arrangements, they were shipping. So the very difficult aspects of the exhibition were taken care of by the Gibbes. I had a sort of pure joy of selecting the works, arranging them, working with wonderful, extremely professional people, and trying to really work to do homage to Dr. Twiggs, appropriate to the quality and the sort of comprehensive nature of this work. To show you, he started out doing conventional painting in oils. Then he discovered a batik. Then he found batik as a voice. And then he branched off into bricolage and assemblage and stained glass and all these fancy words. So that's what I wanted people to see and understand, this trajectory of creativity.
Well, since you mentioned stained glass and abstraction, the windows he designed for the chapel at Claflin.
Well, yes. So the Elmore Chapel is on the campus of Claflin, and there's another interesting connection here. I met Dr. Twiggs. I was introduced to Dr. Twiggs by Justice Ernest Finney, Jr. And Justice Finney had a memorial service at Claflin because, of course, he attended Claflin. His father had been the dean there. Mrs. Finney attended Claflin. And I saw these windows, and I didn't know at that time that Dr. Twiggs I probably had in the back of my mind, because I knew he designed for Mount Zion Church, he had designed these for Claflin, but I had not been in the Elmore Chapel until that point. And he designed the windows such that as you move through the chapel and move farther toward the altar, the holiest part of the church, the windows become brighter in color. And so he's thinking, he has the strategic approach in almost everything he does. And I knew that most people would never get the opportunity to see those windows. And I talked to Sara, and we decided we could do facsimiles. And the other reason I wanted to do that because in Dr. Twiggs talk about his experience walking through the exhibition, The Gibbes exhibition is on the third floor. You start out with galleries that are comparatively small, then they increase in size, and then they open up into this vista where there's a large window with a natural light source. And I thought, that's what I'll do. I'll move the viewer through this experience, and they'll have this revelation at the end of Dr. Twiggs' creativity. And Sara can jump in from there.
Yeah, well, I would say that it is exciting to bring that aspect of Dr. Twiggs's work into the gallery spaces. While the facsimiles are not as large as the windows in the chapel, it really gives you a sense of that design aspect to his work. And it's also been a space where people who are interacting directly with the Requiem for Mother Emanuel series opposite the stained glass windows. And I think it offers a setting for contemplation that has been, I think Frank very brilliantly placed those in juxtaposition to one another.
All right, I'm going to put each of you, or rather both of you, on the spot because I was asked this question by Leo Twiggs. He asked what was my favorite work of his, and of course I did the River series. Mm-hmm. So, Frank?
Well, my favorite work is on the cover of the catalog, and it's from the We've Known Rivers series, which, of course, is an homage to Langston Hughes' poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, which Langston Hughes published at age 17. If you can believe the sophistication of that poem, was made by a 17-year-old, and it was published in the Crisis magazine, and Dr. Twiggs, coincidentally, had a work on the cover of the Crisis magazine much later than the Langston Hughes poem in the 1920s. But the reason I love this work that is on the cover of the catalog so much is because it has 4 masks at the top, and they refer to the, I think it's the Euphrates, the Nile, the Congo, and the Mississippi referred to in the poem. And so they're like ancestral beings, and if you're familiar with African art, the Nomo are water spirits appropriate to the African group, the Doga, and these remind me of the concept of the Nomo, and you have this inverted live oak tree shown in the river. Now, Dr. Twiggs, I think you were raised not far from the Santee.
That's right.
It's the Santee River. And
yes.
Well, what made me so excited about this piece that he created is instead of looking at the tree directly upright as you would see it when you look at it, it's inverted. It's a reflection. And everything in it is based on a point of view. And it's a reminder to all of us that when you engage with art, you're engaging with works of art based on your own subjective response. So we mediate everything that we experience in art and in the world through the sort of trajectory of our own perceptual apparatus. And that's why I love that piece.
Okay. Sara?
It's always difficult to pick one work from a body of work this size, but I have found myself, as we've had the show on display, gravitating to really 2 pieces that are hung together. Nightbird and Dreamers have become 2 of my favorites. Nightbird is of a young boy lying in bed. You can imagine he's beneath a window. It's an interior scene. You imagine this young boy, perhaps Dr. Twiggs, he can answer that himself, looking out the window at a bird. And you see the adults, these silhouetted figures in the room behind him. And I think in many ways we all remember, and a lot of his work is based on memory, as youngsters being put to bed, and that was the time that your imagination ran wild. And I think that story of him looking out the window and seeing the bird fly past, and he says he thinks about what did the bird see, and that different perspective, and how the bird in a lot of his works symbolizes freedom. It symbolizes adventure, exploration. And then I think in contrast, he has the work Dreamers. Frank has positioned that piece next to it. And it's an exterior view of the home that Dr. Twiggs grew up in. And you see the little boys from the outside. You're looking into the house. But you see it's a beautiful night scene. The fireflies are flickering. You see the crescent moon. But you see the environment that these young boys are perhaps sheltered from. There's a safety, it's space for them to dream inside. But you see some of the symbols of the threats and opportunities that may be hard for them to achieve on the outside with the target symbols and the Confederate flag on the outside.
Art Leo, how are you reacting to the three of us choosing our favorite pieces?
What's amazing to me is when you do a piece of work, it becomes like your child. It goes on and it has a life all its own. And I'm interested and carried away by how those two descriptions talk about this work who has gone away from me and who has made a life all its own, and how they see it. And it's amazing because it is so much like what I intended it to be. And as you know, what an artist's intent is just one of it. Once the art gets out there, you can interpret it any way you want, depending on the experience you bring to it. But it was simply fascinating to hear Frank's account and to hear Sara's account, especially the two works together and the relationship. And the relationship of lack of opportunity, all of that is in that particular work. And to see the freedom of the first work and the lack of opportunity in the second work is something that I thought was so important because to me, when I did that house, the old house that I grew up in, and it's still there, the Confederate flag is really not a Confederate flag. It's just the window boarded up and the two big slats across the window, and they just happen to have a little red in them, but they suggest the Confederate flag. And so what I like to do is to suggest things and let the mind run wild with what I suggest. Because I think that as art, you open a door and you hope that the viewer who looks at it will take that door to places he's never been before.
What's fantastic about what Sara chose, though, are these are two works that show a powerful empathy. The bird, a child thinking about a bird, thinking about its experience, and then that's from the inside looking out, because she's looking from inside out the window, and then she goes to the other where you're outside looking into the house, the change of perspective.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff
I think that people would never see that unless you hung it together, and I think that is the power of the way you hung the work.
This is the person I was working with. This man had these incredible conversations. Every day after work, we'd have talks about whatever was happening in the world, about his work, about all kinds of things, about what we're going to show in the museum. And it was just a fascinating thing to just listen to him and explore his creativity in his mind. And so this is what this show gave me the opportunity to deal with. And so I'm so grateful to Sara and to the staff of the Gibbes that I was able to do this.
Well, let me chime in here, Frank, because I am lucky to have someone who knows about your work to do this exhibition. More often than not, that is not the case. I think I am blessed to be here for a retrospective at this time in my life. Usually at this time in anybody's life, the artist has gone on 20 years earlier, 10 years earlier, and it's left up to a curator to put this thing together, and you're looking at what the curator thinks it ought to be rather than what the artist's intent, because the artist's intent is not that important. And so then they can put together a show, and it might not be what the artist is. Here, I can critique the show. I can say that doesn't work. I could say, Frank, let's put this here. And I had this interaction with him, and he knew my work for 20 years or more. And so this has been a beautiful experience, and I think very few artists get a chance to do this at my age.
Yes, and you are a spry 92 because you turned 92 during the exhibition.
Yes.
In February, the month of genius, the birth month of Frederick Douglass and W.B. Du Bois and Langston Hughes.
I never knew that.
Yeah, your idols all in your month.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Frank brings us vast knowledge that he can pull up at any minute when he's doing stuff. So it really has helped with the putting the exhibition together. And I'm really so pleased that it went so well. I got calls from the director of the Gibbes Museum about the crowds they are having and about the number of people coming to see the show. And I've gotten calls from people who saw the show. And, what's interesting about all of this is that I was born just 45 miles north of Charleston, and so I'm painting about my environment where I still live, where I grew up, and where people who come to the museum, if they ride down 52, they can ride right through that environment that I create in my paintings that certainly influenced me and my work. And so it's been one of those great experiences of being home, painting about home, and having people look at it in a new and special way. And I think the video that was done earlier, arriving, that ETV did earlier, that was, I must say, nominated for an Emmy Award, explains the other part of my work. And so here at this juncture in my career, I'm getting these two beautiful pieces about what I've done over the past 92 years.
Well, Leo, you said you were able to still live in the same environment in which you grew up. You were blessed. We're the fastest growing state in the country. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's changing. But you really are blessed to have that landscape.
But it's also my experience. I'm from Sumter, and I grew up on a farm, and I'm old enough to remember when people drove the mule cart into town and parked in front of the bank. And most people didn't have cars, and there were no telephones, and there were no televisions, and there were refrigerators in some people's homes. So I am old enough to have gone through all of these transitions to new modern urban South Carolina. I mean, you can barely get into Charleston now. I was joking with Sara. Yeah, because of the interest in South Carolina and all the attractions that are there. And I think it's Mayor Riley's vision in part, supported by the governor. But the state is changing. It's undergone quite a sea change. But there are elements, artists like Mary Jackson, like Leo Twiggs, preserve aspects that are unique to South Carolina heritage. And the reason, because when we were working on the catalog, and I told Sara and I told Dr. Twiggs, I really wanted Walter to comment in this catalog because he'd had several conversations with Dr. Twiggs that I knew about. And I had worked with Walter on other projects in the past. And I thought there was no one who is better to place Dr. Twiggs' work in a kind of historical framework within the larger framework of South Carolina and in the national framework as well. Because you would have real insight because of your work with this encyclopedia, et cetera. You would have real insight into how he fits into this state and the unique vision he's contributing. And I know you're probably going to talk about Mother Emanuel at some point. The approach he had with that particular difficult subject, I thought was so transformative.
Oh, yes. A point in South Carolina history that has become famous, infamous, and in many ways it continues to tell the kind of artistic history, pro and con, the conflicts, the shared traditions, good and bad, the shared misery, the shared love. And
well, I mean, that's what Dr. Twiggs' works are about, because he did this series and he moves you through the series. He doesn't leave you just with the problem. He moves through and creates a visual resolution, a kind of evolution through the tragedy, using the motif of the naval battlejack designed by William Porcher Miles, who had a direct connection to Charleston. So he uses the motifs of the South, and then the sort of references to the state flag, the palmetto, and the crescent shape, which actually might be a gorget instead of a...
No, it is not, and we don't need to get into
that. Okay, don't go into that. Okay. Well, but it's a crescent moon.
Well, it's a crescent, not a moon. But crescent is the term that the man who designed the flag, William Moultrie, he called it a crescent.
Okay.
Because it was worn in the cap of his soldiers.
Okay.
So, and it was actually a fairly common 18th century adornment. It wasn't peculiar to South Carolina. There was a Canadian regiment that had it. The French used it. So we have, over years, transmogrified that into...
We have made it our own. Yes.
But that word.
Well, but he subsumes all of that history into the works, into the images.
Yeah.
And so the Gibbes had selected him as the semi-quincentennial celebration artist. And when I was told that, I was like, wow, this is fantastic to select this artist, because there's also in it a reference to Hugo, which is another instance where the South Carolinians came together. They overcame tragedy. So I'm going to let Dr. Twiggs take over, because he does these series. There are about 48 works, including the windows.
44.
44.
Yes.
And because we counted the windows as one thing. But the thing that is, to me, that was so striking was that there was so much more we could have added in, because he has other series, not just the We Have Known Rivers series, but the Hugo series, the spiritual series that deals with spirituality that was there, the Ezekiel's Wheels series. So many things that are so much a part, and then of course the flags, the commemoration series. So there's so many things that were in this exhibition that are not only unique to South Carolina, but they are about national discourse. The George Floyd piece.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, the Mother Emanuel series is not the first series that did like that. I think the first series perhaps was the Hurricane series, and that was in '89. And to me, if you do a series, you start at one end of it, and it should end at the other end. It's a work in itself, but it ends. You should deal with it. Even if you don't resolve it, it should be an entity that you deal with from one image to the last image. And so I did the Hurricane series, and I found out later on that nobody had ever done a series like that. And I started doing that when I heard the soundtrack of a hurricane. And I noticed that at the beginning, the hurricane starts slowly with a first breeze, is what I call that first painting. And then it gets stronger, and it falls, and it blows everything out of the way. And then when the hurricane moves on, the damage is there. It's horrible, but it's like a sunny day, as if nothing has happened except the destruction. And that return to where we were before in a hurricane, where the hurricane comes, destroys, and moves on, was what fascinated me about doing that. And so I did it, and online somewhere, I put the soundtrack of a hurricane behind it and showed those images. With Mother Emanuel, it was the road to redemption. How does one say, you killed all out, you horrible person, and then at the end come to the realization that I forgive him? I forgive him. What is that journey from pain and prosecution of this person to redemption for you? And what I did it with the flags and let the viewer walk through it and see that the bloodiness of the flag dissipates as the souls of these folks rise to greater heights. And so when you're dealing with something like that, I like to go with a kind of resolution to it and not just hang it out there as a group of paintings, because a group of paintings that don't connect to each other very well, you can call it a series, but it just doesn't work if it doesn't start with someplace and end with someplace, so that you have a story that ends at that when it was put there. And so that's what happened to the Mother Emanuel series as well as the Hurricane series. And I'm so pleased that both of them went exceptionally well.
Now, in the East Wind Suite, the Hurricane series, he also is paying homage to Philip Simmons, who was another South Carolina treasure. And the gate that's shown in that piece is the one that's owned by, I think, the Smithsonian. And so the Gibbes also happens to have works by Philip Simmons on view in the galleries. They also have on view works by Hale Woodruff as you walk through the galleries on the second floor. So it turns into this art history lesson in a way, because of it being housed in the Gibbes, because of the sort of fortuitous, wonderful character of their own collection. And that's something else for the viewer to experience if they are interested in the art history aspects of his influences.
It's really nice to see all of those connections between these artists that influenced Dr. Twiggs, and you see that through the exhibition and can experience their works as well.
Alfred is getting ready to give me the wind-up sign.
Well, now let's not be so hasty here. Let's mention again that the exhibition is still at the Gibbes through the 3rd. Am I correct? Right.
Correct.
And moves to Florence. Where is it going in Florence?
It's going to the Florence County Museum, and it'll open there on June 9th. And it closes there on October 12th, so there's plenty of time for South Carolinians to see the show.
Yeah, and quite frankly, the more I hear about the way it's done, I am making plans in my head to call my wife and say, we've got to go see this exhibition. It just sounds fantastic.
Well, I'll be glad to call Miss Brenda as well and just
Okay. Yeah, if you call her,
reinforce.
she will put it on our calendar.
Well, I'd like to recommend that people try and see it at the Gibbes because the installation will change when it goes to Florence.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that I worked with the Gibbes to structure the experience specifically for their site. There'll be a different organization of the exhibition at the Florence County Museum.
Sure.
But when you go through the exhibition, the culmination with the windows in front of a window so that the light is coming through them, I think that adds a transcendent quality to what's going on in the show overall. So I do strongly recommend that if you're able to see it at the Gibbes, please see it there. If not, the Florence County Museum is going to be another wonderful venue for it. It's an excellent facility. It's extraordinary. And Stephen Mott, who's the curator there, is a wonderful person to work with as well.
I've got one thing to suggest, Walter. We do need to wrap up.
Yeah.
But I rarely get to ask a question of our guest as a wrap-up sort of thing. But for people listening and hearing about Leo's work, if you were to somebody were to be talking with you on the phone and you say, well, there's this wonderful exhibition of Leo Twiggs at the Gibbes, and they would say, Leo Twiggs, I know the name. Tell me about him. Could you give me like just 5 or 6 sentences that might pull them in to the exhibition?
I think this could be a wrestling match between Sara and Frank.
Okay, all right. I'll be glad to be the referee on that.
Well, I'll let Sara go first.
I would just say you cannot miss out on learning about Dr. Twiggs as a human being and an artist. He is truly a South Carolina treasure. He is a national treasure.
And I would say Leo Twiggs is an artist, educator, and scholar who is a fantastic representative of creative ability in America in terms of he moved from a small rural community in South Carolina to someone of national note. And the contributors to his catalog show that. Connie Choi, who is at the Studio Museum in Harlem, he had a Studio Museum in Harlem show in New York in the 1970s. The distinguished Walter Edgar contributed to the essay. Nikki Finney, who is the National Book Award winner and the Wallace Stevens Poetry Prize winner and professor at University of South Carolina, contributed a poem. Okay, so I'm biased. I think it's a brilliant poem that summarizes Dr. Twiggs. It made me look at him in a completely different way because as a 15-year-old boy, he had to go to work and he worked in a theater. Mm-hmm. And, the celluloid film was volatile. So this 15-year-old, I'm not going to say child, but this adolescent is in the theater changing those reels every 20 minutes and is responsible for the lives of those people in the theater. And he never had a problem. He never had a mistake. There was never a fire that broke out. There's no accident, conscientiousness. And that is the thing that marks his life. And so, again, okay, I'm biased. But it was just everything about this experience was, to me, something that was intended as a tribute to him. And thank you, Walter and Alfred, for allowing us to come on to talk about this. Thank you.
It was our pleasure, and we had planned to do it earlier, but illness forced a reschedule, and both of you coming into Columbia makes it even more special, and of course, having Leo online with us, icing on the cake.
And Leo is appearing today in spite of the fact that earlier he and I had a gigantic wrestling match with technology, trying to get him online. And so, thankfully, the telephone is still in service. Thank you for sticking with that, Leo. I appreciate it.
Well, let me say something before we end this, because it's so important to me. We are up on our 250th anniversary of this country. And everybody talks about the greatness of our country and what we've been through. And, of course, you do the revolutionary period that was just televised and all of that. But it is interesting that you got to also mention the fact that between 1860 and 1865, we had a problem. And whether or not you want to talk about that problem because we're celebrating 250 years is another matter. But I'm so pleased that the Gibbes started my exhibit at the beginning of this celebratory period. And that because of it, we are looking at the other side of this great celebration that people want to quietly walk around but don't want to say as much as they should, because it is one of those scars on our great country that we have to get over, and we're still trying to get over it. And my exhibit introduces it, and it is what it is, and it has been publicized all across the country. Forbes had a big write-up on it, and so I'm so pleased that I have gotten the opportunity to get my, what they say, 2 cents worth at the beginning of this of this celebratory period.
Well, thank you, Leo, and thank you, Frank, and thank you, Sara, for being with us today on the Journal. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Sara Arnold, Frank Martin, and Leo Twiggs. I know that I did. Despite his legacy as a trailblazer, Leo Twiggs had never had a full retrospective in South Carolina before the Gibbes Museum mounted this exhibition. Revelations, the Art of Leo Twiggs, celebrates his visionary career, showcasing his iconic batik technique and profound reflections on the American experience across 6 decades of work. The show ends May the 3rd at the Gibbes and opens at the Florence County Museum June 1st for an extended run.
Walter Edgar's Journal is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. I'm Alfred Turner, and I produce the show, which is made possible by listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. Remember, the views and opinions expressed on Walter Edgar's Journal are not necessarily those of South Carolina Public Radio or its underwriters.
Many of the books discussed on Walter Edgar's Journal can be found as part of the Walter Edgar's Journal Book Nook section at All Good Books in Columbia, South Carolina, or may be available from your local bookstore. We'll talk again soon.